she's a mountain, then you're an ocean.
Hi, everybody. This is Lori, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called Inclusivi-TEA, and also the author of a new book, You Can Save the World. In fact, you're the only one who can. And this is our podcast, and it's called Inclusivi Talks Sustainability. And the podcast is really all about talking to people who are in this sustainability field, but also in creative spaces. And so it's people who are really making a difference in the world in all sorts of interesting, fun ways. And what's important to know is that sustainability encompasses taking care of yourself, taking care of your neighbors, taking care of the world. And so we are able to talk to people from all sorts of walks of life and have it fit under our story, under our umbrella. So today we have a wonderful guest, Kate Furnish, who happens to be a graduate of Grinnell College, where I graduated as well. And Kate and I met at a storytelling event for Grinnell College. So Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's good to be here with you today, Lori.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you. And the reason we're having Kate on is that Kate is someone who helps people take better care of themselves and make better decisions for themselves. And that allows us then the energy to focus on taking care of the world as well. So Kate, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. So I'm a practicing physical therapist, and as a former athlete, or probably current athlete, just not performing at the same level I once was, I'm always looking at how do we have longevity and empower our movement for life and keep ourselves healthy. And as I work with people, you start to also see certain other stresses, because it's never just your body alone. It's everything happening at once. And I know just from this past year in 2020 with COVID, all the stress that was going on globally, as I talked to people individually, there was a lot of individual stress and really significant changes happening in people's lives. And so I started also considering how else can I interact with people to help them take really good care of themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I'm also a single mother. And so I also have learned if I go down, we all go down. It all of a sudden mattered in a different way. You can't just exhaust yourself, because then it's not sustainable to run your home and keep your family going. And so as I got interested in that, I started working with people and talking to people about really that deep self-care, and have developed a program called Surrender, where I teach people the joy method, which is really practices to bring you into your joy and into your fulfilled life as you're living and taking good care of yourself.
I love that. And I love the word joy. And I often think about the fact that if we're experiencing joy, we're going to be much more likely to spread that out into the world and to help the world continue.
I love that you said that. I think so many of us are givers, and we sometimes give to a fault. Mm-hmm. And especially people with a heart for social justice and that want to change the world. They're out there giving. And I want to suggest that maybe one of the most generous things you can give the world is a happy and joyous you. Mm-hmm. So instead of at your expense, you're giving at your pleasure. And when you do that, the well is always full and there's more to give. And I think in the world today, that's what we need, right?
I like that very much. So you said you've always been an athlete. Mm-hmm. So how did you get to being a physical therapist?
Oh, well, the short answer was I was a mom and I needed to go back to work, and I wanted something that I loved enough that I was willing to be away from my child who I loved so much and wanted to be there with. And also, so that's when I went back to school to do physical therapy. I actually had never really even heard of it until after I graduated college, um, as really considered it as a career option for myself. But I knew I wanted to do something in the medical field, and I like to move and help people move. And so it just became a wonderful option. And it's also a field where there's many, many ways you can practice. You can work with children to adults to strokes to athletes. And so it offers a lot of personal opportunity to grow and expand the way you practice.
Now, you said you've always been an athlete. And how did that show up in your younger years?
So in my younger years, I always was on swim teams and doing baseball or softball in the summer. It was definitely something that was important in my family. And it was something to do in the summer. I'm an only child, so it was more fun than staying at home by myself. I could ride to the swimming pool or do something with the team. And so that really became a connection point for me with other people, as well as the joy of movement and things that I really like to do. Some sports you're better at than other ones, right?
Sure.
And so then you start to gravitate and hone the ones that are maybe come a little easier, or where you start to progress a little bit more. But that was really part of my early growing up years. And as you mentioned, we went to Grinnell. I was so lucky to go to a smaller school where I could continue my athletic pursuits in a balanced way too. Some schools, like the Division I schools, those athletes train like 7 hours a day in addition to their course load. And that's a pretty intense schedule for those athletes.
So your method is called the joy method. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I just want you to talk a little bit about why that was important to you, and how joy became the focus.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really the poster child for joy. I seem kind of light and happy. I remember taking a poetry class in college, and it was a very small class, maybe 8 of us, and basically we'd write a poem every week. And one of the students said to me about halfway in, she said, you seem sort of light and happy, but then your poetry is really dark.
Interesting.
And it was an interesting moment of feedback for me, maybe a part that I didn't always express to people. But I think as a child, I had some early abuse, and that life felt pretty painful to me. I mean, honestly, it was sort of, I was resistant to life. There was a lot of pain, and I felt like maybe I wasn't sure I wanted to be in it, or I had to get through it somehow. And doing healing work, counseling and body work and things to bring myself into a good space was really helpful. But there was still this part where I felt like it was easier for everybody else. I don't know if you've ever felt where life just feels hard, and you look around, and especially with social media, you look around, it looks so light and easy for everybody. And maybe not this past year, maybe we're realizing how we are in it together, and how life has its ups and downs. But as I pursued, okay, if I'm going to be in this life, how am I going to do it? And how am I going to do it in a way that's fulfilling and joyous and life-giving, not just to the people around me, but to myself as well? I really pursued that in my own study and my own life. And so I feel like I've honed it down to 3 core principles of centering, grounding, and expanding yourself from all 4 components of a physical component, a spiritual component, a mental, and an emotional component. And if you're familiar with like a Native American medicine wheel, or the 4 parts of the compass, it's those 4 components. And so it's really, how do we find that place where we're claiming our own life and we're starting to express it. You deal with creatives. We all have this creativity in us and this desire to express ourselves that maybe we thwart or we put a mask on and we're not sure of ourselves. But I think the world we're living in today, the time is really now to express yourself. And I remember times when I felt scared to even voice a thought or do something, and I would have a mantra in my head, and it's let your freak flag fly. I would watch people in the world and I thought, wow, I'm just trying to express a thought. Mm-hmm. And another friend is coming out of the closet and telling her family she's gay and having to express that part of herself. But yet when we do, the freedom that comes is so amazing. And so I thought, if people are stepping out in the world and they're expressing things that are hard, that people sometimes don't understand, and they're standing in their truth, what happens if we do that in our lives?
Oh, that's wonderful. So tell me just a little bit more about your program. I'm fascinated with that whole idea, because it sounds like it's so much bigger than physical. It's so much bigger than, it's just big.
Yeah, it is big.
So and I'd like to just know a little bit more about it.
Sure, I'm sorry, and I went on a tangent, but
oh no, it was a good tangent.
It's really to walk people through the steps. So currently I'm opening spots for private coaching. So it's like maybe life coaching or empowerment coaching, where I would, for 4 months, we walk through the steps of that process. And then for the next 8 months, you gain traction in applying those systems to your life so that they become just a part of who you are and part of your life skills, a part of connecting to yourself. We can't really express ourselves if we're not connected to ourselves. And I don't know if you've ever felt like overwhelm or exhaustion. Sometimes you're trying to do things right. Yeah. And especially those of us that are high achievers, right? We want to get it right or make the time, if you're an athlete, or catch the ball, or whatever the thing is, you want to get it right and perfect it. But then that perfectionism and that getting it right can start to become a cage that you're in of trying to please an external source, instead of really coming from the heart of who you are. And that doesn't mean that we can't be excellent at things and that we can't practice and hone things. But what are the things that really fuel us and feed us and sustain us, so that when we're expressing it, when we're performing it, when we're doing it, we're filled at the same time. And so it's really a process of, here are the basic skills that you need and get to practice then applying to your life over the course of a year, working one-on-one with me, of how do you make them automatic? And as we connect to ourselves, we connect to something greater than ourselves, and we connect to our purpose and our mission, which doesn't have to be heavy or difficult. It's just really what fuels you. Because when you're lit up, I have teenagers, so not from a drug standpoint, or alcohol or anything, when you're lit up from the inside of something you love, you bring that light to the world. And I feel that the world really needs that light right now. It needs your light. You matter and you're important. And sometimes people feel crushed by the weight of what they think they're supposed to be, instead of freed by the levity of who they really are.
I love that. I was talking to someone the other day on a podcast, and I think what's interesting to me is that themes come up a lot with different people. And sometimes connected, sometimes exactly the same, and sometimes just kind of a piece that kind of fits, I think. And so for me, and tell me if you agree, but it feels to me like that when someone said to me, you want to find your core, like who you are, what your beliefs are, who you are internally, and then you want to live everything through that. That it sounds like that's related to what you're saying is finding yourself and then finding the path to joyfully live that and reach out to others at the same time. Does
Yeah,
that
that
fit?
rings really true. And also, for those of you that feel like life really is hard and it feels like a struggle, and you toggle between like wanting to give up and trying really hard to make it right and get it right, because you have this desire in yourself for there's something you can't quite put your finger on, but you know it can be better than it is.
Mhm.
That's a real desire, and it really can be. And I look at what you've done, Lori. You know, you had an inspiration to create this thing, inclusivity, and you did it. You acted on it. You didn't hold back. You're creating something, and then it continues to be created every day
Mhm.
as you interact with it and allow it to grow. And it's so beautiful. And it seems like that is something that brings you joy and mission in the world.
Yeah. So, what else do you enjoy? What else do you do besides this, which I suspect is quite consuming? But what
Yeah.
what else? What else is in your life that you enjoy?
Well, in my life, I have, as I said, two teenagers, so I actually really enjoy them when they're willing to interact. Teenagers sometimes like their own space a lot. I live in a beautiful area. I live in Sedona, Arizona, and so I enjoy being out and hiking and just getting outside and seeing the beauty here. Um, I enjoy movement, and I've been blessed this last year when people were really isolated. I was still working with patients. So I really love that interaction with people, and helping them grow and feel better and move better. So I work a lot. I do, I'll be honest with you, but my work is kind of my hobby, if you will. My dad used to say, find what you love enough that you would do for free, and then get good enough at it that people will pay you for it.
Yeah,
I feel really blessed in that I love my work, and it's a fun thing for me to do every day.
I love that. So, for you, was there a point in your childhood that you remember when movement and um, that became just central and important to you? Because you've used not just the word, athletics or the word exercise. You've actually used the word movement a lot, which I think is a different image. That feels different to me than just saying exercise. And
Yeah.
so I'm just wondering if there's a point where you can say, yeah, at that point, movement, just moving my body was incredibly important to me. It's a hard question, potentially.
Yeah. I think I was always pretty busy.
Mhm,
Um, I had a lot of energy and curiosity, and so movement gave me a way to sort of channel that.
mhm,
Um, I could, it probably helps me manage my energy, which tends to run pretty high. Um, when I'm moving, it feels good to me.
mhm.
Um, And yeah, it's not like a chore. Like some people will hear the word exercise, it's like, oh, I gotta go exercise. I have that feeling too sometimes. But moving is just feels freedom, like freedom to me, like I can move. And I think growing up, we had a swimming pool, and I spent a lot of time in the swimming pool. And in a pool of water, you can move all sorts of, you can be upside down, and you can, little kids tend to move lots of ways anyway, but without that gravity in the same way as if you're on a grass yard or something,
Mhm.
um, you could really move. And I think it's just always given me a sense of freedom,
Yeah.
and maybe a sense of taking up. space where it doesn't feel constrained, where other things in a childhood, like schoolwork and the things you were supposed to get done, could feel a little more constraining. Movement felt like freedom.
I resonate with the word because my younger daughter has always been someone who learned better when she was moving, and that's a thing. Some people need to move when they are learning, and for her that would take the form of standing beside her desk or holding one leg up or jumping around. And what we found out, blessedly, she went to a school that the teachers actually said, okay, she can stand by her desk because she's not disruptive. She's not making noise. And when I ask her a question, she always is right on target. But the word movement means something important to me because of that, because there's that connection with just that respect for her needing to do that. It was necessary for her. And even now, I think she will even say that she's learned ways to do that without it being noticeable to other people. But there's always something going on for her physically, some sort of movement, because her brain works better when she's moving.
That's really neat that she knows that about herself too.
Yeah. Well, she's now 20. How old is she? 26, I think. So she's had a long time to learn it. But as a small child, she could have been so damaged if her teachers had not been teachers who noticed that she was learning. She wasn't trying to disrupt the class. She really just needed that, that physical movement at the same time that her brain was working. So you're using the term movement really resonates with me and strikes just such a positive chord. And even as I'm thinking about it, exercise sounds like work. Movement sounds like, stretching. It sounds like freedom. I think freedom is a good word that you use there.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that story about your daughter and that diversity, right? I mean, makes me think of our teachers and how much they do to be inclusive in a classroom and incorporate different styles. It's a huge job.
Yes.
And when it's done well, such a treasure to our youth and our students to learn. And my daughter, my oldest, had dyslexia, and so her learning style was also different. And having to learn about herself and what worked and what didn't work and how to interact and sometimes teach the people teaching you, that doesn't work for me, but if you could do this, that would help me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yes, when teachers, some of my favorite people in the world are my daughter's teachers because they changed everything, right? They allowed her to be herself and to grow into this remarkable young woman that she is. And we've been just so fortunate to run across the right teachers at the right times.
Yeah.
So for you, as you think about this, your new program that you're promoting and coaching, what are your wishes? Like, what's next for you? What are you striving for?
Ooh. Well, really striving at this point to bring this program to people. I'm really excited to launch it and want to launch it really one-on-one with some people and make sure so that I can refine it so that it can be a broad program and a book for people to have and have access to this information. I think it's out there in the world, like pieces of it, but it's not all put together in the same way. And sometimes it's hard to pick through the hay to find the needle in the haystack of what's that gem that's going to help me. And honestly, when I became a single mother, I had been a stay-at-home mom, and I always worked a little, but sort of on the side. And my primary role was being my children's caregiver. And then I moved. I got a full-time job in a new town. I was getting my children adjusted to new schools and hiring a nanny for the first time for after school and figuring that out Just a note, it's good to have people on backup, not just one person you count on. Took me a little while to learn that too. But we did it. And as we were doing it, realizing that it can be extremely taxing. And I don't think it's about balance so much. It's about, how do you figure out how to manage with all these pieces? And especially when you feel like you're doing it alone. I was lucky I lived in a small town, so I had some support in that there were other families I could connect with, and we could carpool or help each other out. How am I going to manage it all? And I would argue that when we manage ourselves, the rest falls into place. But we're not really taught how to manage ourselves. We're taught how to manage it all. So figure this out and figure this out and figure this out and do this and do this and do this and make it all run like clockwork, and make sure your kids are polished and well behaved and the whole game, right? And where do we fit in that? Sometimes we forget that we're a piece of that. We're not just managing our lives, we're living our lives. Mm-hmm. And so that became a piece of sustainability for me. Oh, what do I need? Because thrown into that new situation, I was just concerned about everyone else's needs. I was concerned about meeting the needs of my new job. I'd been out of the full-time workforce for a number of years. And so I was making it to work on time, doing a good job, and making sure my kids were where they needed to be and had what they needed. And you almost can get lost in those pieces. And there are times of transition like that. That's okay. It's okay to get lost a little and course correct and get lost a little. That's kind of how we navigate through. We just don't want to get lost for 20 years at a time.
That makes a lot of sense.
And how do we come back? And so that sustainability for me, it really became my own journey of, I don't want to be bitter or angry or struggling all the time. Sure, there are days that are difficult, but how do I take up my space within the life that I'm living and bring that to my children? Their father lives 4 hours away. My family's not. They're a couple hours away. So I really am their sole person day to day that they see and interact with. And I don't want to be screechy all the time. How do it became a gift I was giving to my kids, but ultimately a gift I was receiving for myself. And it's beautiful. It makes life a beautiful gift.
So what I love that. And as we said towards the beginning, sustainability, if we want to live a sustainable life, any of us, a life where, we're creating a world where everyone thrives and where we're creating a future for all of us, it has to start with taking care of yourself and really honing and figuring out what your values are and what areas you want to focus on. And I think that's just a really perfect lesson, is start with yourself and giving yourself the gift of paying attention and listening and learning what you want. And I think that sounds terrific. It sounds like a really wonderful program. And I have no doubt that people who are in it will love it. And I think all of us can sometimes use just some help structuring things, help understanding ourselves better, just some guidance maybe.
Mm-hmm. And some practices. Mm-hmm. When I'm feeling like this, what can I do?
Yeah.
So that I'm not just avoiding it or putting it in my backpack to deal with later. What can I actually do to move through it so that I'm light at the end of the day?
Yeah.
I'm as light at the end of the day as I am at the beginning of the day.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. So do you have just something you can share with us, a practice or a tip that you have, something that we could practice that would provide some, support or joy or reframing or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that we can always start with is our breath,
Mhm.
right? Because that's happening all the time and we're not always aware of it. But it's happening or you won't be standing, right?
Mhm.
And so that's something we always have with us is to breathe into our body. And I would invite people listening, just notice right now the rhythm of how you're breathing. And Lori, I see you're doing that too. You're kind of taking your attention into feeling that air moving in and out of your body. And without trying to make it happen, just noticing that it's happening. And it's almost like a wave. And sometimes what you'll feel is a peace and a stillness there. Now, sometimes when we go to get quiet, the first thing that'll happen is the noise will pop up and we'll have thoughts rushing at us. And if we can just stay in the sensation of that breath coming in and out of our body, kind of takes us out of our thoughts and into our body, where we can feel that there's a peace there. Or maybe we feel that it's a little sore somewhere, or it's a little uncomfortable somewhere, but we can start to interact with it. Oh, if my shoulders are tight, can I roll my shoulders? Can I drop my shoulders? Oh, am I clenching my belly? How are my hands? Are they resting or are they tight? And just letting the wave of that breath start to almost like a wave in the ocean, feeling it coming in and going out and soothing the sand, if you will. And then feeling into your body, see if you can find a place that's peaceful, a place that you can always come back to. Your peace that you may or may not share with others, but that's always there for you. And if you can breathe in and out of that space, spend some time in that space, that peace will start to ripple out into the life around you. Does that feel doable? What happened for you when you quieted down? I know some people can quiet very quickly and some people, again, if it's noisy, it's okay. Just return to the sensation of the breath.
One of the things I love about breathing exercises, because we do them, when we do our sustainability challenges, we usually have at least one of the challenges be breathing. And what I love about breathing is, first of all, that was a wonderful exercise. That just the focus on the breath is so impactful and so easy because it's something we all have. And I think that that's a very cool thing. That's nothing we have to buy, or we don't have to do anything except be in our bodies. Um, and what I love about breathing exercises is that my experience of them is that it does not really matter what the pattern is. It doesn't matter if you're breathing into a count of 4 or a count of 5 or a count of 3. It doesn't matter if you're holding between breathing in and breathing out. It doesn't matter if you're breathing out, if you're, sometimes they say kind of sniff. You can breathe in that way. So you're going. So what I love is that all of them focus you on your breath, which helps you calm. And it's just a soothing thing to do. And I think that what I recommend to people is that they find an exercise that works for them, and that's beautiful and wonderful. And I like yours in particular, the focus on peace and sort of pulling yourself into your own peace. I think is really beautiful. I feel fortunate, and this is another thing I would say to people is the more you practice that, the better you'll get at it. Because I feel that as soon as someone tells me to pay attention to my breath, I sort of go, ah,
Yeah.
so there is that just sort of immediate, oh yeah, okay, I can do that. So thank you so much. That was lovely.
You're very welcome. And thank you for your experience and practice with it. Like I could see you let go into that. And,
Mhm.
that peace within us, it grows when we spend time there.
Yeah.
And then it's easier to get back there. And so maybe you can't do it in a heated moment or a moment where you're reacting to something, but as you practice it in other moments, then your ability to start to respond in what used to be a heated moment will also be there. And it takes us out of our head into our bodies and into the presence of who we are beyond our thoughts.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of its power.
Kate, this has been really wonderful talking with you, and we're not done. So we are going to stop this episode of Inclusive Talks and do a part 2 with Kate Furnish, and we'll ask a bunch more questions. And I think we'll get kind of philosophical in the second episode.
If she's a mountain